Our next bill is House File 1180 with Rep. Gran. Welcome to the committee, Representative Brand. Chair moves that House File 1180 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Please explain your bill.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I'm going to start off with a question. Do you know how many child care slots you're missing in your communities that you represent? In the greater Mankato area where I represent, we're down about 1,000 child care slots. And we also have the distinction of being the lowest unemployment rate in the entire nation. And so this bill, House File 1180, is a bill that I've been working on since 2019. In the fall of 2020, language was included in the capital investment bill, and was also there in the House position when the bill started out, had $5 million in it for funding. Unfortunately, the final bill did not have the funding needed, but we still have the language, and the account is established within the Department of Deed. And so, I think that this is a different way of looking at it now. We had the conversation about capital investment in the past. Now we're looking at maybe some general fund obligation to this. And so I really appreciate you hearing this bill today. House File 1180 will provide $500,000 per county or city, or up to 50%, whichever it is, in matching funds to cities and counties to acquire land, pre-design, design, renovate, construct, furnish, or equip facilities for providing childcare in those communities. As you will hear from the testifiers, local units of government already know how best to use these funds. By working together with them, this will provide $40 million in investments in greater Minnesota, of course, because of the match, 50-50. This gives counties and communities buy-in and also a shared purpose for providing these services to local communities. And with that, I will yield my time to the testifiers.
All right. Well, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good morning, Chair Hassan, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Scott McMahon, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Greater Minnesota Partnership. I'm here today to speak in support of House File 1180, which will provide funding for the Greater Minnesota Child Care Facilities Grant Program. This program was established at DEED in 2020 and has yet to actually receive any funding. We hope this is the year that changes. Why are we talking about child care in the Economic Development Committee? The simple answer is because child care is the business that allows other businesses to be in business. The more complex answer is that Greater Minnesota currently lacks more than 42,000 child care slots, which makes it increasingly more difficult for our employers to recruit and retain employees. With unemployment at historically low rates, it is becoming increasingly necessary for our employers to look around beyond their community when looking to hire new employees. Unfortunately, our lack of childcare has become a top reason why job openings go unfilled. Without available childcare, workers won't relocate to our communities. A recent survey of economic development directors in Greater Minnesota by the Center for Rural Policy and Development shows that depending on the region, 40 to 60% of EDA directors are hearing from employers weekly that the lack of childcare is negatively impacting their ability to recruit workers, with an additional 20 to 30% saying they hear from employers monthly. With more than 80% of Minnesota families having all parents working, childcare is a significant necessity for our working parents. So what's driving the 42,000 childcare slot shortage? Historically, Greater Minnesota has relied on in-home family care to provide the majority of our childcare slots. In the last 20 years, we have seen a dramatic decrease in the number of in-home childcare slots in our communities. Between 2000 and 2020, the number of in-home slots in Greater Minnesota decreased by 35,000. This was offset by an increase of 15,000 new child care center slots, but this shift alone accounts for almost half, 20,000 of our 42,000 child care slot shortage. We saw a similar exodus of family care slots in the Twin Cities. They lost 39,700. But we also saw a significant increase in the number of new child care center slots in the metro, more than 37,000. So why are we seeing so many family child care providers leaving the market? One significant reason is that family care providers are able to generate enough revenue to be profitable, but it often requires more than 60 hours of work a week to make the business operate, which often means the actual hourly wage for an in-home child care provider is less than $11 a week or an hour. That childcare provider is able to get better pay, better hours, and often actual benefits by working most anywhere else in our economy. So we are seeing family care providers leaving at a significantly high rate. So why aren't we seeing childcare centers open in the same rate in Greater Minnesota as we do the Twin Cities? Simple, economies of scale. Childcare centers are more expensive to operate, thereby requiring a higher number of kids to enroll in order to make the finances work. So in densely populated areas like the Twin Cities, or in some of the larger metropolitan areas of Greater Minnesota, we are seeing childcare centers open and succeed. But in the majority of Greater Minnesota communities, even though we definitely have the demand for childcare, we don't have enough population to demand and support the size of childcare center that is needed to be sustainable. For some time, the general rule of thumb has been a childcare center needs to have a minimum of 80 slots to be sustainable. In recent years, I've seen analysis that shows the number is more like 100 or 110. In 2020, the Department of Human Services created a cost model to determine under what circumstances a childcare center can succeed. DHS's conclusion was that outside of large metropolitan areas, childcare centers simply are not sustainable. This brings us to today, and the request contained in House File 1180, which would invest $20 million into the Greater Minnesota Child Care Facilities Grant Program. We know that we will continue to see reductions in the number of in-home child care slots, and we know that except for large metropolitan areas, child care centers are not economically feasible. With in-home care disappearing in Greater Minnesota, we need to find ways to build child care centers in communities of all sizes in Greater Minnesota to address our economic needs. And this grant program will have a major impact in allowing our communities to do just that. We know that like all businesses, child care centers have two main expense areas, operations and capital. If we can reduce the cost of one of these, then we reduce the amount of revenue needed to break even, thereby making it so that a smaller child care center, ideally something like a 30 to 70 slot size, can become profitable. This bill will provide grants to communities to help offset some of the capital costs needed to build new child care facilities, thereby making them more feasible in our sparsely populated communities. If you want evidence for the need for a financing tool like this, look no further than recent bill introductions or efforts across the state to see the demand and interest in this type of financing. The city of Laverne currently has a bonding request for $3.8 million to build a new child care facility. The city of Warren has sought a local option sales tax to generate $1.6 million to finance a new child care center. The city of Little Falls recently received a $1.5 million federal grant, which will be combined with a recently approved $1.7 million local school levy to build the needed 100-slot child care center. Little Lakers Child Care Center in Lake Crystal recently received a $200,000 state appropriation. The Brainerd YMCA is building a new child care facility with the support of $140,000 from DEED, $400,000 from Crow Wing County, and $600,000 from the federal government. Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures is building a new child care center in partnership with Mille Lacs Health Systems thanks to a $500,000 grant from DEED. I'm currently in conversation with two significant employers in Greater Minnesota who are looking to build child care centers on their campuses to address the child care needs they see with their workforce. And I recently worked with one business who investigated opening up their own child care center and decided not to when they realized just how much money they'd lose operating it. And you will hear shortly from the city of New Ulm on their effort to build a much-needed 40 child care slot center. While Greater Minnesota faces a shortage of more than 42,000 child care slots, and while we're asking for a significant appropriation for this program, we are not asking for the state to solve our problem alone. The state contribution will be matched at least dollar for dollar, and in many cases it will be matched 2 to 1, 5 to 1, or even 10 to 1 with local contributions from our local governments, our businesses, and our families to make our much-needed child care centers a reality. In closing, I want to come back to my opening remarks. Child care is the business that allows other businesses to be in business. Greater Minnesota's economy is ready to grow. Our employers are ready to invest in their businesses and in our communities. But we cannot do this if we do not have the child care needed to support our workers, our families, and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Claire Sanford, Minnesota Child Care Association. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Claire Sanford, and I am on the board of the Minnesota Child Care Association. MCCA is a statewide nonprofit membership association representing licensed child care centers, and I'm very pleased to be here in support of House File 1180 today. If you take nothing else from today, please say child care and not daycare. Days take care of themselves. We care for and educate children. We know the child care situation is dire everywhere across the state, and that childcare is an incredible two-generation economic investment, allowing not only current families and parents to be in the workforce, but educating and preparing their own children to succeed in school and be in our workforce decades down the line. Our existing center providers are contacted by Greater Minnesota communities almost weekly saying, please, would you expand? Would you come here? Both from metro area providers and providers that are already in Greater Minnesota. Please, will you open another center? We need more, we need more. And every single one of those opportunities is studied because providers want to expand. And the answer is always the same. The numbers don't work. And it always comes down to the two things that Mr. McMahon was just speaking about, operational costs and capital costs. On the operational side, centers need a certain population density of people with the means to access services. In some metro areas, programs can be cited where demographics support this. In Greater Minnesota, a center needs all low, middle, and high-income families in a community able to access because the population density isn't there. There aren't enough people of only higher income or something to make a center work. Very high-income families might have the means to choose services for their children. Low and middle-income families often do not. On the capital side, facility costs are the other huge item. Facilities must be purpose-built or renovated for young children. This is not elementary school light. We need more and closer bathrooms. We need changing facilities. We need environments that support sight and sound supervision. You need to move walls in a lot of cases. This is not cheap. Supervision requirements for a 2-year-old are a lot different to keep that child safe than they are for a 10-year-old. And we all know how real estate works. You don't only have one-time upfront costs. You need to finance those capital costs over time. Rent and mortgage are paid for decades. And those facility costs are passed on to families for decades in the form of ongoing tuition. HF 1180 will help providers subsidize and reduce those capital costs so tuition can be kept lower for families and wages can be higher for our early educators. I have personal knowledge of several Greater Minnesota Center projects that have fallen apart because in the end, they couldn't make the facility costs work. They could not get the facility costs low enough. Providers have said, with those capital costs and the amount local families are able to pay, we'd have to pay poverty wages to actually make that program work. And this is not minimum wage work. We are not willing to do that. It is already an incredibly low-paid field. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we pay parking lot attendants more to watch cars in our country than we pay the people who educate and care for our young children. This is shameful. So HF 1180 is, I should say, to that piece, it doesn't seem like real economic development if we offer a community more childcare so people have a place for their children and they can go to work, but the cost of that is those positions for early educators are not able to support their own families. That doesn't seem like true economic development to me. Both sides of that equation need to work. And HF 1180 is a piece of this puzzle. I commend the House for passage of 2 child care bills earlier this week around child care assistance and early learning scholarships so that families in Greater Minnesota, more families will have the means to purchase child care, which helps on the operational side of the equation. This bill, and I thank Rep. Brand for bringing it, empowers local communities and providers on the facility side. We know that Greater Minnesota communities are crying out for this help. No one bats an eye at funding high school as a piece of our economic development, but families and communities are left on their own for children, very young children, birth to 5. So I urge you to support this bill, and thank you again, Rep. Brand, for your attention to this issue.
Thank you. And then up next, we have Heather from City of New Ulm. She's the Economic Development Director. Welcome. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
All right. Good morning, Chair Hassan and members of the committee. My name is Heather Briegel. I work for the City of New Ulm Economic Development Authority. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what we have going on to try and meet the need for childcare in our community. The City of New Ulm, like every other city, needs more childcare options for our working families. According to a need analysis provided by First Children's Finance, an additional 184 birth to age 5 spots are needed in our school district at this time. Of those, we need 36 to 56 infant spots. It is estimated that 90% of children under age 5 in our community have all parents in the workplace. This is significantly higher than the statewide average of 76%. New Ulm also has a very low unemployment rate. We have 34 family providers in our community. 15 of those, or about 44%, are reaching retirement age. They've been doing this for over 20 years, and they're planning to stop providing childcare in the next 3 to 5 years. We simply cannot afford to lose those spots in our community. It's going to make our crisis worse. We don't have enough new providers going into this business fast enough to replace the providers that we will be losing. And I'll just reinforce what's already been said. The reason people are not going into this business is because they make poverty wages. I heard a recent study said that dog walkers make more than child care providers for the first time ever, and that is shameful. We need to do something to solve that problem. Businesses are already reporting that they have difficulty recruiting and retaining the workforce they need to fill their job openings, so this is an economic development issue. We cannot rely on the private sector to solve this problem. The cost of construction is too high to make financing a child care center work. Our employers do not want to be in the child care business. The City of New Ulm has stepped in to make a child care facility a reality in New Ulm. We do not want to be in the child care business either, but we were left with no other options. We recently acquired a commercial building and will be rehabbing the space this year to rent out to providers at below market rent to run their child care businesses under the pod model. This facility will provide 30 to 40 spots in our community, which doesn't even come close to meeting our need. The total cost of this project is nearly $1 million. We applied for $150,000 in funding from DEED's Minnesota Child Care Economic Development Grant, but unfortunately we were not awarded any grant funds. We continue to seek and apply for grant opportunities for this project, as well as fundraise from our local community and businesses. It would be helpful if we could access funding at the state or federal level to help offset the cost of this project so we don't have to go it alone. I would ask you to support this bill. Thank you for listening, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Discussion on the bill? All right, who wants to go first? Okay.
Madam Chair, I apologize.
No
Trying to
problem.
figure
Go
out who
ahead.
goes first. It's like a bad comedy skit over here. My question is, with daycare centers, especially in greater Minnesota, the facilities, and this bill seems to be a one-size-fits-all, unfortunately. In greater Minnesota, we used to have a lot of in-home care units. It was mentioned the number, and we've decreased significantly in the last 20 years. But it would seem that this bill would only deal with the daycare centers and not really do anything to maybe take care of some of the burdensome regulations that were put on the smaller in-home facilities over the years. And if you could address that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah.
Rep. Brand or whoever else wants to take it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Wiener. You know, I would just refer back to my earlier testimony. So this bill actually will do a lot of different things for counties and cities. And so it can be for pre-design, design, renovate, construct, furnish, equip, and provide childcare. Exactly for what you're talking about, centers. We have another bill that'll be coming up next that I hope that we can also address some of the other issues with in-home centers and developing folks that want to have in-home daycare centers. This is, I guess, go back to my philosophy of the legislature. We don't have a lot of silver bullets around here, but what we have are opportunities to make some incremental changes. And this particular bill would help cities like New Ulm not go it alone. The city of St. Peter, we did it a long time ago, and we rent out 2 spaces to to childcare providers at a subsidized rate because we know that we're also down slots and we are providing some value to the community by offering those opportunities. Those were in-home centers that actually moved up. And so these create economic opportunities for folks that are like, gosh, I'd like to get out of an in-home situation, maybe do something in a center base. This is a step-up opportunity to work collaboratively with a city or with a county to get this going as well. There are cities across our state that just don't have the horsepower. This will help them provide the horsepower.
Rep. Weiner, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, there was a number that was thrown out earlier about the feasibility, you have to have enough children. In my area, we have small towns. I mean, small towns. There's not enough kids in most of those small towns to justify a facility for the numbers to work out. So that was my concern, if we can microeconomy this a little bit more to bring it more in line with the rural area. We don't have those larger towns to support enough kids.
Mr. McMahon, do you want to
Well,
take it?
thank you, Madam Chair. And to go back to that, this next bill will also help with providing opportunities for people who are in hope and developing those opportunities as well. But I don't think the solution to the problem is going to be just in this committee. As we look at opportunities to serve greater Minnesota across the spectrum of committees, providing economic opportunity, providing communities with opportunities to draw people to the community with the services that they will provide in the future, those are conversations we need to have, and I'm happy to have those conversations with you. Let's go.
All right.
Mr. McMahon, do you have something to add?
Yes, I do.
ahead.
Chair Hassan and Representative, thank you for the questions. I mean, you're hitting a lot of the greater Minnesota, the rural, the smaller community issues on the head. And this bill, in the context of what this committee has jurisdiction for, will provide those opportunities. As I mentioned in my testimony, one of the reasons that we're seeing providers leave is that we have a generation of in-home providers leaving, not being replaced by new providers coming in the marketplace. One of the things we hear consistently from those who are looking at coming into the marketplace is they don't want it in their home. So we need to find some sort of solution that provides childcare that's in a location other than a family's basement. In the New Ulm model, what they're looking at is doing the pod model. And so what that's doing is that's creating a space for the traditional in-home childcare provider who's operating under a family care license to have a space outside of the home to operate. So they'll be operating as family care providers, not as a childcare center in that New Ulm example. And so these dollars will allow the opportunity for a place like New Ulm to say, hey, here's the space, 2 or 3 or 4 providers come forward, you can operate what has traditionally been your in-home childcare facility in a space on Main Street or in your commercial zones or whatnot, and provide that opportunity so that we do have that existing that in-home childcare feel, but in the location that our childcare entrepreneurs are looking for as we look for the next generation of providers.
Thank you. Rep. Schumacher, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Brandt and Mr. McMahon. Glad you're there. I have a few questions for you on this. And just to start out, you'll receive an email from me asking to get on this bill when you get back to your office. But a couple of questions. The first, you brought up the Center for Rural Policy and Development report. I know that came out in October, and they always do really great work. And part of what that report also showed when they did the case studies throughout the state is that I believe the headline for the facility center type model was the best laid plans that fail, because of a lot of the reasons that were talked about today. And it's felt like they were encouraging more of the pod model for that. You also referenced the Laverne site there, and when that's all said and done, just to get operational is going to cost about $34,000 per slot just to get things open. Now, 15 miles down the road in Hills, Minnesota, population of 600, they're going with the pod model for 40 slots, and they're able to get it done for $4,000 a slot. So I think from what was asked before, this money, even though it references facilities, can go to pod models too for this, or is there an opportunity there to really utilize that?
Mr. McMahon?
Madam Chair, Representative, absolutely. These dollars can be used for any facility outside of a home in which a childcare business is going to operate in, whether it's a pod model, which you will find me to be probably the strongest advocate for the pod model at the legislature because I think it truly is the solution to the greater Minnesota problem. Finding a place outside of the home for that family care license, which is a less expensive license to operate under versus a child care center. It's also more scalable. Most of our communities don't need 100, 110, 120 child care slot facility. We need the 20, 30, 40, 50 slot, which the pod model works perfectly for.
Rep. Schumacher, do you
Thank
have a
you,
follow-up?
Madam Chair and Mr. McMahon, Representative Brent Grant. Glad to hear that. I know there are some issues with the pod model overall and some of the contracting pieces that isn't part of this bill, but some other solutions that I'd be happy to work with you on if I can be helpful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Rep. Katisa Watun.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Brand, for your work, your continued work on child care and expanding opportunities for families and children in greater Minnesota. I've had the privilege to work with Mr. McMahon and Ms. Sanford on a number of proposals. I just want to make sure that, in the discussion, when we look at one proposal, that we are looking at that proposal for its elements and what it can do to support economic development in any given area. I mean, whether it's greater Minnesota, whether it's here in the metro, and that we're not pitting childcare providers against each other. There are a lot of benefits, and there are a lot of folks who go into childcare for a variety of different reasons, whether it's to be home with their children or to be able to take care of their grandchildren, and whatever it might be. They go into childcare because they care about kids and they care about the future of Minnesota, and it's just, I think it's critical that there is a time for conversation to discuss regulation and some of these changes, and I'm working with the Child Care Association on some of those this session. But I think that this proposal is very important, and I appreciate some of the earlier questions about the pod model, because I know some of the innovation that we've been seeing across greater Minnesota thus far is really excellent, and I've seen some of that in the smaller communities that I'm a part of. I'm a property owner in Otter Tail County, and I know that they're doing some really amazing stuff up in that area. And I just think that any support that we can provide as the state, as the legislature, to folks and encourage them to go into this really important area to make sure that our kids have a safe and affordable place to be, and that then their parents can feel good about going back to work. And helping address those worker shortage that we're seeing across all industries is really important. So I appreciate that.
All right, Rep. Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair Hassan, and to Representative Brand for bringing this bill forward. This is, I'll just echo what's been shared. It's a critical top priority for us in northeastern greater Minnesota. And I really appreciate the question that was raised around, the types of centers and slots that this funds could be injected for. As I understand, these are new dollars that are going to be injected in our community. And in terms of the one size fits all, I can tell you in Duluth that we have childcare centers, we have in-home after school, housing based, where we have new housing developments that have added on that childcare center, as well as you mentioned, in greater Minnesota, employers who are looking at how is that right mix to be able to offer that to recruit and retain workforce. As a parent, I can tell you that the cost to pay to play and send your kid to childcare is massive, and at some estimates that it's 40% of your income. I can tell you that for the summer months, and when I send my kid to all year, and just having one child is close to the monthly mortgage, and that's crippling for families, as we know. You had asked the number of what's the number of slots that's needed in our area. For us, it's 3,700, and that's really massive amount. So we know that there's so many challenges, right? The operational costs, the furnishing, utilities, and then being able to pay a livable wage. I think personally it's asinine that we have people who are making that small amount, $11 and less, to take care of our children during the day. And we know that it's also crippling our economy and our families. It's really holding us back in greater Minnesota. So my question is, we sort of struggle with that tension between keeping our childcare slots that we have and figuring out how to create new ones. And my question to you is, would these dollars be able to go to support childcare centers that are in operation to make sure that we maintain them, as well as for new? And then we're talking about the injection of really transformational funds. Could you give us a stroke of how many slots or centers you think that these dollars could really go that would bring online?
Rep. Brand.
I'll defer to Mr. McMahon on that one, but there's one comment I did want to make to you, and it's really ironic in a way that folks are making $11 or less per hour to do this job, but also it's 40% of somebody's income. That's really hard. For my mind, I struggle with that because we want them to make more. We want them to make that livable wage. We want them to be happy at their job and not burn out, just like our teachers or our firefighters or anybody else, right? And so it's a big problem. And, you know, again, no silver bullets here, but a lot of the things that we can do and we can move these levers one way or the other can really make a difference.
Mr. McMahon.
Chair Hassan, Representative. So to your first question, this program was created back in 2020 with the intent of creating new capacity. So it's not intended that if a existing childcare facility needs some rehabilitation and not add new slots, that this would not be available for them. But what we do see in these communities, and we're seeing it, and I suspect it will probably be the case in the New Ulm example, is that when we build out a space for 30 or 40 new slots, it's that in-home provider who's been having 10 kids who's moving up and taking the next step to add the new space in it. So we're providing that opportunity for somebody who has that dream, who's been in the business, has that dream for being bigger, to come in and do that. As for the potential for this, it's hard to say. I do need to commend the Northland Foundation representative out of your area probably did the best study probably about 4 or 5 years ago looking in their service territory as to what the cost is per slot. I don't have those numbers offhand. I don't know if Claire has anything top of mind that she can add into this one. But, you know, we see anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000 per slot is the capital cost needed to come in, ballparkish, to come in there. But what this grant program does is it empowers communities to step forward. And I want to give one example. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago in Spicer, Minnesota, they needed to build a new child care facility. They came forward and they received a $50,000 grant from DEED. They leveraged that against $800,000 or more of local money given by the businesses, given by the community, given by a grandma who knitted and sold baby blankets and contributed all those dollars into this project. So a $50,000 grant leveraged against $800,000 created a childcare center that opened up on day one debt-free. Every dollar of revenue that they generated could then go into supporting their workforce and their operations. That's what this program will unleash in all of our communities. It will unleash the opportunity for our businesses and our local governments and our community members to step forward and say, hey, we're getting some funding from the state. Let's step forward and fill in the rest of it to make this a reality. So even though the bill calls for, the program calls for a dollar for dollar match, in most cases we will see likely far more than that dollar to dollar. We will see 2 to 1. We will see 5 to 1. We will see 10 to 1. And so what this could actually do is, it's the art of the possible. We may be able to leverage $20 million against $100 million at the end of the day of local contributions.
Do you have a follow-up? Or?
Sure, I'll just say thank you so much for that. I think the opportunity to be able to unleash and expand and prop up our families and our communities and employers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lead Kosnick?
We have one bill after this too, right?
Yes.
Why don't I say my comments until then, but
Oh, okay.
that'll be fine. We'll keep moving on. I know.
Awesome. All right. Rep. Brand, your final comments on the bill?
Well, first I want to say thank you very much for hearing the bill today. And thank you very much, Representative Schumacher, for saying, I want to sign on to this bill. That's what I actually emailed you about a couple weeks ago on the floor. I was working on signatures for this bill. And so it is bipartisan. I really enjoy that. That was bipartisan in the past, and there's still room on the bill. So I hope everybody can find room to, in their day to sign on to the bill. I just want to say, let's deliver on the value that we all share here in St. Paul, and that's building stronger communities across Minnesota. These investments will definitely make an impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Brand. Chair renews that House File, her motion that House File 1180 will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill.